So, good morning, India. This is Amritanshu Vajpayee. I welcome you all on behalf of the Sky Foundation, the Ignited Minds WIPNET Club, Sky Amateur Astronomers WIPNET Club, and Women Led Science Club, and also the intellectual partner Akash Ganga Center for Astronomy, Mumbai. Welcome you all on today's Astronomy Delights series, episode 17. We are very much delighted to have Professor Narendra Bhandari with us today as an esteemed guest speaker of the morning session of the day. Welcome, Bhandari, sir. And before I invite Mr. Shubhan Raj to introduce the speaker for the day, I would just like to give you a brief insight regarding what the speaker of the day shall be addressing at. Meteors or the shooting stars and all the near Earth objects, they have been a topic of debates and discussions of late in the concurrent era. So the speaker for the day shall be taking you to that an exciting world or the exciting journey of the meteors and all the other near Earth objects. So without trying to waste any time, I would just like to invite on stage our member, the youngest member of the Sky Foundation, Mr. Shubhan Raj, to kindly welcome the speaker for the day before I roll out the instructions to the audience. Over to you, Shubhan.
Good morning, everyone. As Mr. Vajpayee has already given an introduction of today's session, Falling Stones and Secrets of the Universe by Professor Narendra Bhandari, let me introduce all our esteemed audience to the speaker of the day. Professor Narendra Bhandari is a space scientist. He obtained his PhD from Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai. He carried out research work at University of California, San Diego, USA, and later worked as senior professor at Physical Research Laboratory (PRL) of Department of Space at Ahmedabad and chaired its Geocosmophysics division. He was among the first group of scientists to study the samples of the moon brought by Apollo missions of NASA and Luna missions of USSR. He started and chaired ISRO's Planetary Sciences and Exploration (PLANEX) program and pioneering contributions to India's first mission to Moon, Chandrayaan-1, and was responsible for finding its science objectives. He was a member of the Moon Mission Task Force, Chandrayaan-1 Science Advisory Board, and Instrument Selection Committee for Mars Orbiter mission of ISRO. Besides planetary sciences and exploration, his research interests include cosmic rays, meteorites, and asteroids and their impacts on Earth, glaciers in Himalayas and Antarctica, and measurements of radioactivity and their application as tracers. He served as president of the International Lunar Exploration Working Group. For his contributions to planetary and space sciences, Professor Bhandari has been honored with several national and international awards, notably Outstanding Achievement Award of ISRO for his contributions to the Indian Space Program, Vikram Sarabhai Award in Planetary and Space Sciences, National Mineral Award of Government of India, and Special Certificate of Recognition by NASA. He has also been given the Marwar Ratna Award. He is a fellow of Indian National Science Academy and Indian Academy of Sciences and many other science academies. He has written several books, notably The Mysterious Moon and India's Chandrayaan-1 Mission and Falling Stones and Secrets of the Universe, and has published over 300 research papers on cosmic rays, meteorites, moon samples, and earth sciences. Presently, he holds the chair at Science and Spirituality Research Institute, Ahmedabad. He has published and edited several books on Jain philosophy, namely Jainism, a universal and eternal path to enlightenment, scientific perspectives of Jainism, and Jain philosophy, a scientific approach to reality. Now I request Professor Bhandari to come on the dais for today's session.
Thank you, Shubhan, for introducing our esteemed guest of the day. Welcome, Narendra sir, on behalf of all the collaborating institutions and also the EduSTEM Initiative Global, who is partnering us right from New York. On behalf of all, I would just like to welcome you all. Before Bhandari sir begins presentation, I would just like to roll a couple of instructions for our esteemed audience. The first of the instruction is that is, as I can see, there are a few people who are joining, and at the same time, they are trying to present the screen also. So I would just request kindly pin the presenting screen of Professor Bhandari which shall be visible by his own name. And so there will be a hassle-free, you can say, exchange of conversation from the part of the speaker towards the audience, and you will also be really
Sir,
able
in
to
the
enjoy the talk of the day. Second and most important thing is, I would request all the audience to kindly mute themselves so that it does not interfere with the talk of the esteemed speaker of the day. So Bhandari sir, I would request you to kindly start sharing your screen, kindly present your screen so that we can begin the presentation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vajpayee, for this fantastic audience. I always like to talk to young people because the topic I am talking is about, stones which fall, that is meteorites, These are messengers from space. And thank you to Raj for nice introduction. I'm going to involve all of you in this meteorite work and try to tell you how important they are in our understanding of our origins. So these are the rocks which fall from the sky, and we have learned to some extent to talk to rocks. So, you'll be surprised that lots of rocks, they tell their story, and every rock has a story to tell, its own story, which is quite distinct from others to tell. And I'm going to discuss with you what we have learned from the study of these rocks, and what we should do. And I want to involve all of you, and I hope at the end of the talk, you'll all become meteorite collectors and enthusiasts. So let me begin with this talk that is falling stones and what secrets of the universe we have learned. So if you see the night sky, these days it is very clear because of less pollution and clear atmosphere. You see the stars and planets and, such a beautiful sky. Sometimes you happen to see a comet. Actually, one comet is going around and it will be closest on 23rd of July, the Neowise. So people inferred that if they can see everything so clearly, that means the whole space around us is empty and there are only these few bodies here and there. But that is not right. Actually, we live in a very crowded space. And if the God had not given us the atmosphere, we won't be there, to be sure. Because Earth will become more like Moon. You have seen how many craters are there on the Moon. And we will have probably 10 times more than what you have in the Moon. And it will not be possible for us to survive. So it is this umbrella we have, umbrella of the atmosphere, which really makes our life so comfortable. And not only that, it gives you so many phenomena. So I begin with showing you this first slide in which you can see this Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, and then you have this belt of stones. This is the asteroid belt, and then you have the giant gaseous planets, Jupiter and Saturn, and then you have the icy planets, Uranus and Neptune, and then you have another belt which is named after Kuiper, and this is called Kuiper's belt. So most of the stones from Kuiper's belt and from the asteroid belt, they somehow manage to come to Earth. Takes long time actually. I'll give you some examples, but it takes millions and millions or hundreds of millions years to start their journey from the Kuiper's belt and from the asteroid belt and reach the Earth. So this atmosphere is great. It gives you a lot of phenomena, the phenomena of meteors, So this is the picture I took from the Mount Abu Observatory, the physical research laboratory where I work. has an observatory at Mount Abu, and we went there to see the Leonid shower. So you can see these hundreds of meteors coming and hitting you. These are pinhead-sized balls, the micron-sized dust, the small particles which come and hit the Earth. And then there are bigger bodies like this stone. This is the Alanda meteorite, and this is a iron meteorite, and this is a fireball. This is another phenomena, a fireball, which produces white, red, or green light, and sometimes they fall on the snow and make a small crater. This is a 6-meter crater of this meteorite, this fireball, which came actually on Valentine's Day on the Earth a few years ago. So Valentine's Day, it comes, means they like us very much. They like the Earth very much. But this is not very happy situation, because if they come and hit, there will be catastrophe on the Earth, and I'll try to talk about that. So that day, what happened, they were expecting an asteroid to come from one side, and had all the telescopes and binoculars pointing towards the direction that asteroid was to come. But this fellow was a bonus. That fellow came and went away. But this meteorite came and from the other side, from the back, and fell in Russia and made this little hole. So this was a very fantastic thing. You look for one and you get one free. And that was remarkable. It didn't do much damage. But you see, I told you about these rocks talking. So even before they come, they send a signal. And lot of sound vibration is there. All the window panes will break, and some roofs will be shattered, and so on. And some 1,500 people were hurt in that particular event. So, you know, it is not very safe in spite of the atmosphere. So if you look at the Earth, this is the map of the Earth, and all points I have marked here of what are the craters found on Earth. Now, these are not the fresh ones. These are the old ones. And you see, there are very few, only about 200 or little more than 200. But if atmosphere was not there, there will be thousands, and we won't be there. So you see, here is India, and there is this Lonar crater I have marked. Actually, 4 craters are known in India. We have worked on some of them. One is in Ramgarh. It's called Ramgarh crater near Kota in Rajasthan. The other is Lonar, the Buldana district in Maharashtra. There is one called Dhala in Madhya Pradesh, and there's one Kaveri crater recently found in Kaveri Basin, Kaveri River Basin. So this is the Lonar, these are the 4 craters, Ramgarh, Dhala, Kaveri, and Lonar meteorite lake. So this lake, you must have seen, some of you must have gone there. You are all amateur astronomy enthusiasts. So this is about 2 kilometers wide and 200 meters deep near Ajanta caves. If you have not seen it, then please, next time you visit Ajanta, please go there. It's very close by, this Ajanta and Ellora caves. Now, this is full of water, but when the first time I went there in 1970s, it was very dry, and we could walk down the bottom, and there were temples, and we found some bangles and some glass, and we dated them. And this is formed about 45,000 years ago. Why we went there is that when I was working on this moon samples, you know, moon is made largely of basalt, and this is the only crater in the world which is in a basaltic formation. So we wanted to know how the crater in a basalt looks like and what are its characteristics. So it has a rim which is about 200 meter deep is from the bottom of the crater. And then all the material is thrown out, and we collected a lot of glass from outside also, and some small tektites, and we dated it. So up to this is all right. There'll be some local damage because this crater is formed by something like 1/10 of the diameter of the the bolide which comes and strikes. So only 100 or 200 meter fellow has come and made this, punched this hole. But if you have a big one coming, a 10 kilometer, then that can destroy the civilization. And you know that dinosaurs were destroyed in such an impact 65 million years ago. So this is the largest crater. This is about, this is in South Africa, 300 kilometer in diameter, formed by a 10 kilometer body. And you know the energy, you all know how to calculate the energy, that is half mv square. So m is not much, but velocity is very high, because the velocity with which it strikes the earth will be somewhere between 11 and 70 kilometer, depending on its catching up with the earth or it is meeting head on. And that half mv square is like 1,000 megatons of atom bomb. You know, Hiroshima was only 20 kilotons. So this is megatons, 1,000 times there and 50 times here. So 50,000 times more than Hiroshima. You know what can it do? It can vaporize 70 cubic kilometer of rock. But what happens to this energy? So this asteroid or a comet which destroyed our dinosaurs, who walked through the earth from about 200 some odd million years to about 65 million years ago. So they will all be become extinct, and the probability is quite large. It's going to happen one day. But we can take a very positive approach and say, what can we learn from them? That thing is not in our hands. If it comes and destroys the civilization, there's not much we can do, although people are trying now how to mitigate or deviate the asteroid. But we can learn what the universe is made of, how and when the sun and planets were formed, how and where from the life on Earth has come. Is it endogenic, that is made on Earth, or it has come from outside? And some of the meteorites have organic molecules. I'll talk about the one which fell in Jaipur a few years ago, where we found a lot of organic molecules. And what are the subsequent processes through which planets have gone through, and how the life on Earth evolves or get destroyed. Now, when it comes, the meteorite comes, there is a radiation in space, there are collisions, and it goes through all that. So we can learn about radiation too. And of course, the big question today is why there are no aliens. They should be there. So the point is that we can learn quite a bit, and actually, frankly speaking, much of what we know about solar system, its age, its composition, all this is based on meteorite work. So they are, a storehouse of knowledge. Only we have to learn how to get information out of them, how to talk to them and say, please tell us when you were formed and where from you are coming. And those things we have learned. So there are more than 40 types of meteorites known to us. So at least we know about 40 bodies in space. They are coming from Moon, they are coming from Mars, they are coming from maybe other planets, but mostly coming from asteroids. Some are coming from comets. And the biggest discovery, in my view, in planetary science in last 1 year has been that 2 bodies have come from outside the solar system. See, we spend millions and billions of rupees to go and pick up sample of Moon or some nearby planet. But these are coming free of charge to our doorstep. And not only from our solar system, from our planetary systems, from our asteroids, but two of them have been identified because of their orbit, because they are hyperbolic orbits, that they have come from outside our solar system. So that is fantastic. We'll never be able to go, at least not in coming foreseeable future. So there are a lot of information, and what we are trying to do here is to understand this information. But we have a very rich astronomical history in India. Vara Meher, that is about 6th century, he describes meteorites before anybody else in the world did. And I quote here 2 shlokas from his Brihat Samhita. He says, the forms of those who fall down after having enjoyed unalloyed happiness in heaven are called ulkas or meteors, which are divided into 5 kinds: incandescent balls, meteors, thunderbolts, lightning, and shooting stars. I think before the world woke up to understand meteorites, Vara Meher must have observed this. And the other one, he says that the ulkas or meteor is broad at the top, having a very tiny tail, and as it falls down, it increases in dimension, its length, and all that. So this is about Vara Meher. But later on in 12th century, Jayadev, who wrote this Stuti, he said, Keshav Dhrit Kalki Sharire Jai Jagdish Hare Dhoom Ketu Mavi Kamip Karalam. Means like a comet will come with its arm and destroy the people on earth, that Kalki avatar. So this is also very fantastic. That not only they bring life from outside, they also destroy the life when the time is right. So I want to mention here that the biggest contribution from meteorites has come from the work of our great scientist Meghnad Saha. Before Saha, as you know, if you go and look at the night sky, you will see different types of stars, red, and some are blue, and some are white, and some are having different orangish color, and so on. So it was believed that their color is due to their composition. But Meghnad Saha, for the first time, looked at the spectral lines emitted from the sun and told us that sun's composition is not because its composition, sun's spectrum is not because of its composition, but because it is very hot and elements are ionized. And he gave what is famous Saha formula, which is now used. So mostly stars are having same composition, only their temperatures are different. That is what Saha told us. So when carbonaceous type of chondrites, I'll describe one of them for you here, were analyzed, it was surprised to find that the composition of these meteorites is the same as the of the sun. So they must be original if they are made of the same material as the sun. So that is very good. We have already a sample of the sun in our hands, and they made what you call cosmic abundance table. Suess and Urey, these are 2 great scientists at the University of California, San Diego, where I also worked for some time. They prepared what is called as cosmic abundance table. And they found a fantastic thing, you know. I want to show that graph. They found that most abundant, of course, is hydrogen. Now, this is based on meteorites, because you can't measure these elements in spectra, not all the elements. And most of this have odd even effect. That means even nuclei are having more abundance and odd one less, and then again the next one even more, and then the odd one less. So this was a big discovery. And Burbage, Fowler, and Hoyle, you know, Fowler got Nobel Prize, Urey is a Nobel laureate, and Hoyle, of course, is a great scientist, and so are Burbages. They found out from this abundance table how the elements are made from hydrogen. If hydrogen is the most abundant, then all these are formed from hydrogen. And whether in the galaxy or in the star or on the interstellar space, how these elements, what we see, the rocks of the earth, how they are formed, they told us for the first time that the nucleosynthetic processes, because high temperature and right composition occurs in various stars. A very famous work by Burbage, Fowler, and Hoyle, which laid the foundation of nucleosynthesis. So this was one big discovery, that what is the composition of various stars and how these elements, right from hydrogen to lead, iron is very abundant, oxygen is very abundant, thank God. Carbon is also very abundant. So carbon, oxygen, and iron, these and many other things, phosphorus, sulfur, and all that, which give rise to life, they are all present there. Now there was a turning point. So I take you back 50 years to 1969, which was a great year in the history of planetary science. First discovery was made by Japanese scientists who went to Antarctica, and they found some rocks sitting there. And you know, Antarctica is mostly ice, glaciers, and snow. And how come these rocks have come? So they inferred correctly that they must have come from outside. They must be meteors. And they brought these 9 rocks back. And afterwards, every country has been going there and collecting these rocks. And today we have about 30,000 meteorites. Some from Mars, some from Moon, some from other asteroids, very precious ones. But at the same time, a carbonaceous meteorite fell in Allende in Mexico. And this is older than the oldest rock we ever knew. This is older than the, our planets. And so this must be the primitive material out of which planets are formed. And it had some calcium and aluminum, which condense at very high temperature. So they gave us, we call them star dust actually. This is the dust coming from a star. And then at the same time in Australia, one meteorite fell in a place called Murchison, which is a carbonaceous chondrite, which has a lot of carbon. And that has amino acids and lots of organic compounds were formed. And the biggest thing of 1969 is the Apollo mission, which went to Moon and brought back a sample. So we had a fantastic year there, and ever since that, the life has not been same. We have learned lots of things, and I want to describe some of them. This is Antarctica, and there's a hills here. So when the ice melts, all these meteorites which fall from outside over the last million years or so, they go and collect here, and you just go and pick up the meteorites. So they are worth, if you send a mission like ISRO sends for Chandrayaan and so on, or NASA sends, it will cost billions of dollars. And the first moon mission, Apollo, brought only a few hundred grams. So it is worth billions and billions of, rupees. So very, very precious material it is. You can't say it is weighed in gold. It is more expensive than that. Gold is nothing. So encouraged by this 1969 event, we have been keeping an eye on meteorites, and we have found these are all the meteorites which fell in Rajasthan and Jainaran Vyas University there, Dr. Tripathi, Dr. Shishodia, and so on, and some other people. They have helped us collect these meteorites. We immediately go as soon as we hear about meteorites, and we found a fantastic kind of meteorites. One is Pipalia Kalan, very famous. I'll talk about this a little bit. One went to Nathdwara on a Christmas day. And these two things, actually this Sanchor iron meteorite just fell about 15 days ago, I mean on 19th of June. So maybe 3 weeks ago. And the Mukundpura fell in 2017. And this is a carbonaceous chondrite. So lots of meteorites have been falling, and we have been going there and collecting it. And I want you to get excited because meteorite doesn't come unannounced. It brings with it a light and a sound show. What you have seen in Lal Killa or in Sabarmati Ashram or other places, this light and sound show is nothing compared to the light and sound show created by these meteors, you know. So if you are standing just below the path of the meteorite, you get a hissing sound like a cobra hissing, like this. And it is so frightening that sometimes people faint. In fact, one person we met at Lohavat who fainted after this, he heard this sound. And then there is sometimes a detonating sound like bombs exploding. So they always say, since Rajasthan is close to Pakistan, they say, oh, maybe some bomb has come. That is what happened to Sanchor also. So when it breaks, it makes a detonating sound. And then large meteorites form crater. And there are over 140 meteorite craters known, and largest one, I talked about this. So this, I think, how to recognize a meteorite, let me spend a couple of minutes on this. Firstly, they are heavy. They are heavier than the local rocks. The local rocks will have a density of about 3 or lower, generally, but they can go up to 3.6, and iron meteorites will be very heavy, twice as heavy. So you can immediately look at that. And then if you polish and boil it in nitric acid with little alcohol, you get this structure of building type of thing called Widmanstatten pattern. So that is sure sign that it is a meteorite. Most of them are magnetic, and they have a crust because when they burn in the atmosphere, they develop this kind of crust. I'll show you some pictures, and thumb marks. And they smell of sulfur, some of them. Some of them have round balls. And if you have a small piece, we polish it and we'll find golden color, iron sulfide, smell of sulfur, Widmanstatten structure. You know, he was a printer, Widmanstatten, and he did this experiment as a hobby and became famous for this pattern which develops in iron meteorites. So these are the thumbprints like this, you know, जैसे वो आटा गूंथते हैं ना तो ऐसे अंगूठे के निशान लग जाते हैं. They are called thumbprints. And then they have sometimes these balls. These are called chondrules. These are not found in Earth. They are ideal, you know, very distinct signatures of meteorites. So you can tell a meteorite from its fusion crust. And this is a very big event going back to 1976 when something fell in Dhazala, a place not far from Ahmedabad. And we collected about 500 pieces. The smallest piece fell here, closest, first thing, and the largest piece was farthest, some 18 kilometers away. And you see all this size represents, the size of the ball represents the size of the meteorite roughly. The biggest one was 12 kilogram, and there are few kilogram, and their smallest one was like a button, shirt button. So we collected all this, and it was a fantastic experience. And my purpose of this talk today is to excite you enough that you will start looking for it. These are the school children. We usually go to schools and ask children to help us collect. And you know the way they stand in a line. Unfortunately, at that time, we didn't have good cameras or mobiles. So we took this picture in the evening. And you know, they made a file, a long line, and went through all this jungle. It's a desert area, actually. And, you know, they were so lucky that about 200 children came with us, and each one found a ball, a piece. And they were so happy. They became our meteorite experts. Actually, they could just look at it and say, this is the meteorite. Because they are different from the rocks. And some were finding it difficult to walk, but they came with us nonetheless and were so happy to find rocks. So there are 3 types of meteorites. The question now is how many of these fall? So every year about 1,000 meteorites fall on the earth, or more than that actually. And every day about 100 tons of dust will fall on the earth. But you know, earth is very big. So some of us are crazy enough to have balloons or aeroplanes to collect this dust as it falls, because this is actually the material out of which the earth is formed originally. So if 1,000 meteorite falls every year, and some of these have these round balls, these are stony irons, these are stone meteorites, and most abundant is of course stones with balls. That is about 70% are those, irons are less. So point I want to make is that if you keep your eyes open and look around your area of about 10-kilometer radius around your house, you are sure to find one meteorite in your lifetime. It will fall in that region. And that watching a cosmic event or collecting a cosmic body is the greatest experience one can have. Now, from this we have learned that the earth has formed in 5 stages. Once there is in the beginning, there is a molecular cloud in space. It is rotating. It is denser compared to other clouds. Then it collapses. It breaks in a small body, and that shrinks, and that forms a protosun in the middle and a disk here. And then the dust is cleared, and we have, for every ring we have a planet. You'll have Mercury, Venus, Earth, and so on. All the dust will collect, and then finally we have the Earth. So these are the stages: breakup of a molecular cloud, formation of solar nebula, we call it solar nebula, and formation of protosun and clearing of dust, which eventually gives rise to planets. But when all this happens, the molecular cloud has a core of a grain or something, but water will condense on it. Ammonia, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, all methane, all this will condense. And these grains, this here I show the picture of the Orion Nebula here. This is where a lot of dust is there, you know, you can see it in the evening sky. And there you will have these grains formed. And very surprising that in the process of formation of sun, which is very hot, its inside is 1.5 million degrees, outside is about 6,000 degrees. And these things survive, you know, these grains survive, and they come to us even now. So some of them are, of course, left by comets. You have seen Comet West. This is one of the most specular one. This is spectacular comet was seen few years ago in the sky. And just now, as I said, there is this Neowise comet, which will come very close to Earth on in 10 days' time. And so comets are our, they give life to us and they take it away. Comet give it and comet take it away. And many comets have been studied and organic compounds have been found, glycine and alcohol and, formaldehyde and many organic compounds have been found. When these things come, as Jaydev in his Geet Govind has written, there is evidence that these things come, hit the earth and can destroy, as it happened during dinosaur time. And these are the meteor showers, this is, let's say, a comet path. On its path, it will leave the dust, and Earth will go and intersect it every year in the same place. So every year on the appointed day, these showers, this the river of sand left behind in space, they will come and they will give rise to our meteor things. And the famous ones are Perseids, Leonids, and Geminids. I just mentioned 3 of them. There are about 40 or such things. Every month you have a shower. And which comet is responsible? We have identified that. Scientists have worked very hard. They have even gone to comets and brought some samples back and compared and so on. So I take you 3 years ago to 2017. There's a place, Mukundpura, very close to Jaipur. My friend Dr. Tripathi lives there. And that day I happened to be driving to Udaipur in car, and I heard on radio that this thing has fallen. I talked to Tripathi, and he went and picked up the samples. There is a story I have written recently in Nature India. You can read it. It's very interesting and educating. So this meteorite is nothing different from coal. It's black. It broke into hundreds of pieces. There is a very little pit, and immediately the police these days are very alert. They are looking for bombs. So they came and looked for it, and a 2.7 kilogram is collected by Geological Survey of India. This is formed 4.5 billion years ago. And most of its time it is spent on an asteroid. And then from asteroid to Earth, that in our laboratory, Dr. Mahajan has done this work at PRL, it took 7 million years to reach Earth. So this is fantastic. It has 2.3% or even sometimes a little less, very heterogeneous carbon. And it has a lot of water, 8% water. So we measured all this, and then we said, oh, this is a carbonaceous chondrite. So let us look for polyaromatic and aliphatic hydrocarbons and so on. So if you dissolve it in some solvent, you get a soluble component and you get a non-soluble component, insoluble component. And the insoluble component have large molecules, and people try to fit some compound, match some compound. It has like C100, hydrogen 46, nitrogen, oxygen, sulfur. And this is this non-soluble. And soluble one, I show you in the next slide. There are 2 ways it can be formed. One is the Fischer-Tropsch synthesis, in which CO is produced through some water gas shift reaction. So CO is produced, makes CO2, and CO2 combines with the hydrogen, and then this makes molecules. This is essentially like you get petrol or diesel from coal. It's a similar process. And there is another process which is called Miller-Urey synthesis. And Miller was there when I was working at University of California. He did a brilliant experiment. He took a flask, put hydrogen, carbon dioxide, methane, water, nitrogen, ammonia, and put a little spark. And what he get is a red, a green color solution here, which has ethanoic acid, lactic acid, urea, and many nucleotides, and 15 amino acids were found in this. So you can make these amino acids, which are actually building blocks of life. I think if life originated chemically, then first they have to form amino acids, and these amino acids can be just formed if electric current or a lightning or some energy is given to this mixture. And in the flask, you will get all these very complicated, large amino acids we call the building blocks of life. So what we have learned from these meteorites is very fantastic. We learned that universe started 13.7 or 14 billion years ago, sun 4.567 billion years ago, Earth was formed at 4.47 billion years ago, and life on Earth started as algae 3.5 billion years ago. So all this has been learned, and this I just show you how many molecules. There's about more than 40 molecules we found in Mukundpura meteorite. And this is the spectrum we get. Each peak is one molecule. So we do it on mass spectrometry or gas chromatography. And this is done by Dr. Kalpana, who works with us at NGRI. And a fantastic work. But now, so life can originate from comets, meteorites, meteor dust. So that is our creator, our originator, and we are there because meteorites are there. But it is like it is destroyer also. It is like Shiva. A 1 meter body will fall every hour or every few hours. A 100-meter body will fall every century. A kilometer-sized body will fall every million years, and a 100-kilometer sized body will fall once in a lifetime, maybe on the earth, but 10-kilometer body every 100 or 50 million years. So when these things fall on earth from space, this one only makes the chota fellows, the small ones will make small craters and finish. But the big ones can create tsunamis, widespread devastation, climatic change, and these ones, which are very big, 10-kilometer and bigger, can destroy all life on Earth. And this is a serious business. You know that this is the same curve plotted in megatons, TNT equivalent. You know Hiroshima, the nuclear bomb which fell on Japan, killed lots of people, was only 20 kiloton. And something like that happens every year on Earth. But we don't notice, as I said, because of atmosphere. But when the big thing will fall, it is not only people will be destroyed by direct hit, cities and towns, but a series of physical, chemical processes start. And this is one event which formed at Tunguska in Siberia about 100 years ago, supposed to be a 40 or 50 meter object. All the trees were flattened. And it is 100 years and it's about time similar thing may happen again. So let us be prepared. And that is what I think many astronomers are worried, that things may happen, so they are monitoring it. So that happens once in a century. And big mass extinction we call, because not only life, but most of the life is destroyed. And that happens, once in 100 million years. So this particular thing which formed Siberia, this trees to flatten, actually vaporized at 6 kilometer height. That is what is estimated. And 2,000 square kilometer was flattened. So these are serious events. I think we have to take note of them. And when very big ones form, very big meteorites fall on Earth, then this is the sediment in the sea. You can go to the sea and find out the record. There are dinosaurs here. You find dinosaur bones and many, many animals. Then there's a red layer here. And then all these animals are lost. About 70% are lost. And new type of species develop. So this is a Gubbio section in Italy, which was done by Dr. Alvarez. And I went there and saw this one. I was amazed. And when we talked to Alvarez, he said, I asked him whether we can find one in India, because this dust will fall all over. And he said, no. India was not in the area of fall, because the earth was rotating, so it would have fallen beyond India. But we came here and found two sites, one in Meghalaya and one in Anjar in Kutch, where this dust is there. And this is the meteorite dust. And very surprisingly, there are dinosaurs below, because Kutch is full of dinosaurs. And above that, there is no dinosaur. So all dinosaurs got killed because of this event when this dust was formed. So you can see that, and people have worked out where it has fallen. It has this meteorite fell in Gulf of Mexico, and they went there in the Gulf of Mexico in the coast of US, and found on the bottom of the Gulf there is a gravitational anomaly. That means something has happened there. And when this mitti, the ejecta, came out, it fell on the land. And they even said it fell in the month of June. So June is a very dangerous month. And very interesting how it fell in June is because they found some flowers, the fossils of those flowers, and those flowers only bloom in June. So this must have ejecta, the dust must have fallen there, and the flowers were buried because they were in full bloom. So the enormous energy, first the atmosphere will heat, then the plume will go in the atmosphere, then it will shield the sun rays to come, there will be cooling for many thousands of years, and this nitrogen and sulfur of meteorites that will combine with oxygen and make acid rains. It will combine with water, and something like 1 liter of nitric acid will fall on Earth. All the shells will be destroyed, life will be destroyed. There will be so much energy, heat, that forest will burn away, and some people claim that even volcanism can be triggered. So this Deccan volcanism, which is spreading from Hyderabad to Anjar to Nagpur, is all because maybe some people think that that big body came and hit the Earth. So now I'll come to the end and say that this is such a danger thing that about 8 or even more observatories have been set up. This NASA has set up some, Lowell Observatory, Catalana Sky Survey, Japanese are doing something. They are looking for these bodies which may come and hit the Earth. Not that we can do much, but we can certainly know beforehand so that we can do whatever possible, at least pray. And this is not periodic. You cannot predict when it will happen. It can occur any time without warning. So next one, you will ask probably when it is going to happen. The nearest is 2029. Then there's one in 2036. And another is predicted for 2068. And there are many. Actually, they come every other year, every other month even. But go away. But probability of their falling is very little. But these are events which are very close. So such a thing can happen. There are 26 known asteroids larger than 200 meters, and so they are very dangerous. And 99% of asteroids are more than 100 kilometers in diameter, and there are smaller ones. So what I try to tell you is that meteorites bring life to Earth probably. They bring a lot of information. They are like a library. We can learn a lot about our solar system, and they can also destroy the life on Earth. We may not be there where a big body comes and hits the Earth. So I think it is a very exciting field, and I suggest that you all become meteorite hunters and collect one meteorite of your own. Good luck and thank you. But if you don't know about the knowledge which meteorites give, then like Jahangir, the Emperor Jahangir, somebody gave him iron meteorite and all he could do is make a khanjar out of it and keep it. So this is Jahangir's khanjar, which he kept as a showpiece. So for us, learning is very important, and in a brief time I tried to tell you what we have learned from meteorites. And there is a book, of course, I have written on this with the same name, Falling Stones and Meteorites. Those who are interested in learning more can go through that book. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Narendra sir, for such an enlightening session on behalf of your representation. It was a really informative session, and we are really thankful to you on behalf of all the organizers. So, dear audience, as I can see, there are a lot of questions overboard. With due permission, so Narendra sir, can we kindly proceed out for the interactive session, sir?
Surely.
Sure, sir. So, so now we shall be proceeding in two manners. Let me introduce my co-host Swapnil Rastogi also. Swapnil, I would request you to kindly take the questions from the chat box, and until and unless you are browsing, what I will do is, Narendra sir,
Hello.
in that meantime, I shall be taking up the questions that are being presented on the different Facebook platforms. So, sir, the first question that has come to me is by Mr. Vijay Shankarji. He has asked, sir, can seismic or impact energy lead to an increase in temperature at the mantle or core boundary?
At the what is the last part I didn't hear?
That is, can seismic or impact energy lead to an increase in the temperature at the mantle or core boundary?
No, I don't think it will reach there. It will disturb, of course, the core. Some people say that, I mean, at least the mantle can be, mantle flows. It is in a current, a convection current. So that will get disturbed. And the heat will be mostly dissipated in formation of crater. Most of the heat will be absorbed by ejecta, giving them kinetic velocity, and there'll be sometimes a glass layer formed at the contact point of the bolide and the crater, and most of it will go away in that melting of rock. And some shock waves, of course, will go through the earth. This is like a seismic, earthquake of the magnitude 10 or something. In Gujarat, we had about 20 years ago one earthquake which was around 6.7 or something. So this goes some 4 orders of magnitude more. So it will surely go through the earth. The waves will go through, but how much it will be converted into heat in the core, I don't think it will reach there. It will be dissipated before that. But sometimes a big body can even change the orbit of the Earth. It's so much energy.
Sure. So thank you, sir. So let me move to the next question that is asked by Mr. Vibhuti Karnik from Bhubaneswar. Sir, he is asking to Narendra sir kindly throw some light on the morphological difference in the impact crater and volcanic crater.
Okay, they are very different. Yes, you are right. I think that's very important to identify. Firstly, the impact crater will have a raised rim. The volcanic craters usually don't have that kind of high raised rim. That is number one. Secondly, if the crater is large, then there's a small rebound at the center of at the middle of this crater bottom. So small hills will rise. These hills don't rise in a volcanic crater. So the morphology is different, and most importantly, since the ejecta is thrown out, the stratigraphy is reversed. In case of volcanic crater, the stratigraphy is not reversed. It just comes out and settles on the top. But in impact crater, the stratigraphy is reversed. The bottom will come at the top and top will go at the bottom. So these are 3 basic differences. One is the raised rim, diameter to rim size ratio. The second is the hill at the bottom of the crater, small hillocks. The third is the stratigraphy reversal. And impact event is such that there are things which are called shattered cones. These can only be formed by impact, and every mineral will have some kind of shear. So the lattice structure will be disturbed, and we call them PDF. The PDF features will be formed. There will be lines in orthogonal direction. So you can distinguish it many ways. Sometimes glass is formed.
Thank you, sir. Naren sir, thanks a lot. And before I hand over the baton to my friend Swapnil Rastogi for asking the questions on behalf of the chat box, this is the final question that I have received via a live platform. Sir, what is a meteor storm and how often do they occur in the context of India? Over to you, sir.
Meteor storm is you know, as I told you, the comets, they leave a trail of sand behind because they are made of sand and ice. Ice is vaporized as they approach the sun because of high temperature, and sand gets separated, and there are in space these rivers of sand. Now, these things sometimes come in groups. I mean, they come together and form a consolidated volume in which their density of these sand grains is very high. And when the Earth meets this kind of collected grains, then you have the meteors, the showers. So meteor streams are these sands, and the showers come when the Earth meets. So Earth has 1 year orbit, and so also these things have a fixed orbit, so they always meet at a certain time. So meteor stream and Earth will meet, and we'll have meteor shower on the Earth. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. As I can see that I cannot see Swapnil. Maybe we have lost him because of the constraint of the network. So, Naren sir, there is a question from Utkarsh Singh. He has asked, sir, what is the composition of the different types of the meteorites which we have detailed? Over to you, sir.
So meteorites are of many kinds, as 40 types, you know, I mentioned. Some are mostly rich in iron and nickel. They have the same elements as we have, but they also have iridium, osmium, platinum, little bit of gold in traces, more than Earth rocks. So composition will differ from, some are even volcanic rocks from space. You know, there's volcanism on asteroids. So they are volcanic rocks from there. So composition of each one is different, but broadly, they are rocks with carbon and without carbon, and the ones with carbon have these molecules, organic molecules, the amino acids and so on. And then the stones have different compositions. Some are volatile, some are non-volatiles. And then there's a third category, which is stony iron, which is made of stone as well as iron. So we can go through, he can write to me on email or something, I can explain it more detail. But basically there are 3 types of meteorites composition wise.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Thanks for such a candid reply. Swapnil, kindly.
There is a question, sir. If like meteorites hit the Earth and made it a crater, then where will the meteorites gone? Like, it's a question from Keshav Pratap Singh. He want to know, like, where is the meteorite gone?
So meteorite, sometimes if the meteorite comes with cosmic velocity, that means it does not lose all its velocity before it hits the Earth. Then it will make a big crater. It will go deep. So some 5-6 feet deep is very normal. If there's a high velocity meteorite comes and hits. The others, you know, one thing we must note that 95% of the mass of the meteorite burns in the atmosphere. That is another fortunate situation for us. So if they say 2 tons of body is coming, then only some 20 kilogram or something will fall on the earth. The rest will all burn in the atmosphere. So atmosphere is a great protector for us. And then this meteorite you can find in the crater, or it will picked up. Fortunately, we have lots of very high population density, so very few meteorites go unnoticed. And eventually it is given to Geological Survey of India, and they store it in Calcutta Museum, where they have hundreds of meteorites on display, and some are locked.
Okay, sir. So there is another question from a lady, Mamta Chabra. She wants to know what type of radiation meteoroid produce while falling. Are they harmful?
Meteorites don't actually give much radiation. They have a very small amount of radioactivity that is benign. They don't hurt us. That is less than even earth rocks. When they come, then they, because of friction, they excite the oxygen and nitrogen and all these gases in the atmosphere. And it is actually those gases which give light. So they give optical light in various colors. And if the meteorite has some sodium, it will give yellow color, and some cobalt or nickel and things like this. They will give reddish or greenish or other colors depending on the trace elements. But these are not harmful. The radiation from the meteorite is not harmful. Only sound is harmful. So I suggest some of you, nowadays, lot of good technology is available. You can put a CCTV camera on your roof, and also an acoustic collector. That means sound collector, who will give you a buzz. So when the meteorite comes, it gives a lot of sound, and that shatters the windows. Roofs are broken, and so on. But radiation-wise, there is no damage.
So, sir, as the time running out, I want to take last 2 questions. So the second last question is, there are rare earthly rocks heavier than 3.5. How you compare it with the meteoroids then? It's a question from Satish Kukade.
Yeah, there are, of course, rocks. So one thing is not enough. You have to see all the features. It should be magnetic. It should have some smell of sulfur, for example. The absence doesn't mean that it is not a meteorite, but presence shows that it is a meteorite. But eventually, you have to do isotopic analysis. See, oxygen has 3 isotopes, 16, 17, and 18. If you measure that ratio, that is very different in Earth and in meteorites. And then there are other elements which have different ratios. Oxygen, mostly it is done, then nitrogen, then there are other elements. That ratio is like your DNA, like your fingerprint. If you have the ratio, you can tell it is from Mars, or it is from Moon, or it is from other places, or it is from Earth. So the clinching evidence is the isotopic ratio.
Okay, sir. And the last question for the day that I want to take is, like, despite being meteoroids smaller in size, how do they produce such large amount of sound while falling onto Earth? It's a question from Amok Deshpande.
Yes. So the meteor actually doesn't produce sound. It is the atmosphere. You know, the compression waves. As the meteorite is coming, it compresses the air. And as it proceeds further, the air behind will expand. So it is the compression and expansion which will give rise to this hissing sound. And when it breaks, of course, the sound of the meteorite is the one like that, what I said, the bomb exploding or something like that. Sometimes people say it is like transformer burning. You know, in villages, they have a transformer outside for electricity. So some sparking sound, that kind of thing is found. But it is very interesting that the magnitude of sound is so intense that it is almost frightening.
Thank you, sir, and thanks, Swapnil, for asking such a beautiful question from the behalf of Sky Foundation.
Anil Thanvi has one question. Anil Thanvi here.
Anil ji actually has got a couple of questions, and we have got one announcement also related to Anil ji. तो अनिल जी से रिलेटेड एक अनाउंसमेंट है जो कि आपकी टॉक खत्म होने से पहले जो है हम स्काई फाउंडेशन के बिहाफ पर उसका अनाउंसमेंट देंगे। तो एक छोटा सा सर 2 सवाल जो हैं जो हमको हमारे ऑडियंस की तरफ से आए थे, जो कि पूछना मुझको आवश्यक भी लगता है। दे आर इन द कंटेक्स्ट ऑफ कॉमेट एटलस एंड कॉमेट न्यूवाइज। क्वेश्चन था निशांत नायर जी का, तो मैं 2 क्वेश्चंस को आपस में मिलाता हूं सर। एक सवाल ये है कि सर ए मीटियोर शावर्स दे हैव मोस्टली कॉमेट ओरिजिन, so do we expect a meteor shower from the debris of comet Atlas that recently disintegrated in the month of April 2020? And to this I would just also like to combine the second question, that is, will Earth pass through the path taken by comet Neowise also? Will this create a new meteor shower? So that is, in total, both the questions are under context, that is whether the debris of comet Atlas and that left by comet Neowise after its passing away, will it lead to a meteor shower? Over to you.
Now, every comet, which is, comets are coming, there are 2 types of comets. Some are coming from as far as 100,000 AU, 80,000 AU, far away. AU means distance between Sun and Earth. So 100,000 times that distance between Sun and Earth, very far away. Those things have this, what you call dust and ice. So when they come, each one leaves the trail, the meteor streams. Now, once they come, the Jupiter is a giant fellow. It does not, allow things to come in. It is like a guard there, a big guard sitting there. So the short period comets, it gravitationally, it converts them into short period comets. And then once it has come close to the sun, most of the dust goes away in a few orbits. So surely every comet leaves a trail. But about Atlas and Neowise, we have to sit down and see whether they will cross the Earth's orbit. I don't think that will happen. But I have to check. I have not gone through those details.
Thanks for such a candid reply, sir. And so last of the 2 questions that I shall be taking is, one is from Mr. Abhishek Dikshit. It is a continuum of the question that Utkarsh Singh's question that you have answered. You have already answered regarding the composition of the meteorites. So now the supplementary question is from Abhishek ji is, what kind of processes and experiments they are performed in the rocks to identify the age, as you have shown in the slide of 7 million years and all? That is, what are the experimentations that are being done by scientists like you?
So there are many kinds of ages of meteorites. One is when it was formed. That is the real age. Second is at what time it was ejected from the parent body. That means some asteroid it is coming from. At what time it got separated. And so that is another age. Then the time it takes to come to Earth, that is another age. So this one, the last one, the time it takes in interplanetary space to reach Earth, we call exposure age. And that we determine by the action of cosmic rays and the meteorite material. They produce some rare gases like neon isotopes or krypton isotopes. So those isotopes we measure, and then we get the exposure age. That means how much time it spends in the interplanetary space. Then the formation age, when it was formed, is there are another pair, a daughter-mother pair of radionuclides, like potassium-argon. You measure, the argon is produced from potassium. Potassium 40 gives argon 40. So measure potassium 40, measure argon 40, and from that ratio, you can tell for how long argon has been collecting inside the meteorite. That is the formation age. Then sometimes when it is kicked out of the parent asteroid, that old gases are lost. So that gives you the shock effect. By shock, it is lost. You know, something comes and hits a parent body, an asteroid, and then it gets heated up or shocked, then all those gases are lost. New gases are formed. So there are these isotope pairs, right from lead ages, potassium argon, strontium rubidium, they give all the formation ages. Then neon 21, neon 22, argon 36, argon 40, like this we get krypton 81 is another isotope. So various radioisotopes pairs are used to get these various types of ages. It depends on what you are interested in. Mukundpura, for example, spent 7 million years in space. Meteorites which come from moon spend very little time, less than million year, maybe 100,000 years, because Earth is very close to moon, and anything comes out of the moon will be swept by the Earth. So it comes very quickly. So, you know, this is very useful information. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So since we are getting a bunch of questions, so we would just like to end up the session with last question from Utkarsh ji. And I assure the audience, the esteemed audience, who are the real strength of Sky, that we shall put up your dignified questions in front of the honorable speaker, and you shall be getting the reply in the due course of time. I assure you. So kindly forgive us if any of the questions has not been taken up. So this is the last question. That is, what is the average speed of meteorites before entering the Earth's atmosphere? And how do we calculate that speed? This is from a student of Utkarsh Singh.
Yes. So, see, the Earth is going around the sun. And Earth is going around the sun with something like 30 kilometers per second speed. So there are two ways. One is Earth is going and the meteor comes head on and hits. And meteor, when it comes here, it is also having of similar speed, like 30, 40 kilometers per second. So the resultant velocity will become something like 60, 70 kilometers per second. And comets also have very inclined orbits. So their orbits, they are also moving with very high speed. So this is about 60, 70, 50 kilometers per second. But when small particles come in the atmosphere, they slow down because of atmospheric friction. Some of them come to a stop in the atmosphere itself. All the velocity, the cosmic velocity with which they come is absorbed. Then they simply fall like any rock will form. And they get about 200 meters per second or something like that, the gravitational speed of fall. So that is one scenario. The other scenario is the Earth is going and meteorite is also going and it catches from behind. Then that 30 kilometer and 30 kilometer, more or less, it touches. So it will be 1-2 kilometer per second, something. So whatever difference is, it's not exactly 30. So when it when it is head-on collision, it is more. When it is catching up from behind, it is less. And then it will enter, because nothing less than 11 kilometers per second can enter. It will enter the Earth with geocentric velocity of 11 kilometers. And then it depends on the angle. If it is vertical, then it will lose much less energy. If it is grazing angle, that is coming tangential to Earth, it will lose more energy in the atmosphere. So all these things are important, and some will break. So it depends on the shear strength of the rock. So the angle, the velocity, the shear strength, the type of material, all this will contribute to the final velocity. So this is different for different cases.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for such a detailed analysis of a question the question by Utkarsh Singh, sir. And thanks Utkarsh Singh ji for asking such a wonderful question to our speaker. And sir, before we head on for the formal closure of the session, as a, you can say, the parting comment that we take from all the experts who graced the occasion regarding the challenges and opportunities before the amateur astronomers of India. Over to you, sir.
Yes, I already mentioned that we should all, as a hobby, try to collect and look for meteorites. And
Hello.
if you don't work on meteorites and find
Hello.
out all this, talk to it and get all the details, it is like any other stone without any value. So the most important thing is that one should do work on it. So get it to a laboratory where things can be done, and physical research laboratory is one place where I work. We can do lots of things, actually more number of things than any other laboratory in the world. We do a large number of studies. And the way you can participate is put on a CCTV camera on your roof and look for the pictures, and put an acoustic meter, a sound meter, and see for the, you can put many, so that, finally you have to do triangulation, that where it has fallen, you need more than 3 or 4 observations. And that is how we observe this. Or you can put a wide angle camera on the roof. I can assure you the excitement if you can find one meteorite of your own. And as I already told, that within 10-kilometer radius of yourself in 100 years, you are sure to have one meteorite fallen. And actually, there's another puzzle in Rajasthan, as I mentioned in the map, if you've seen, more meteorites have fallen than we were expecting. So that is another puzzle, and there are lots of theories, but we have not been able to prove why it is so. But I don't believe in those theories that there is a preferred to fall there. But maybe because it is desert, that people can see it more clearly. Night sky is clear and so on. So my parting message would be that we all should jointly work for this and collect meteorites if possible. And I can assure you, you will find one someday. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for gracing the dais for the day on this digital platform. And it was really a trip down memory lane for me, because you took me back to the days when I had held the samples, first meteorite samples in my hand, courtesy to Dr. Bharat Adur, who is listening to us on this platform. And I assure all the audience who are here with us that yes, the joy that you shall feel by taking the meteorite over your hand, it will be the moment of millennium for you. That I assure you on behalf of the speaker and on behalf of the platform. So before we proceed to the formal vote of thanks, I have a small announcement to make for you, that on this platform of Sky, we not only promote the people who promote the talk of the people who have really worked for the betterment of the astronomy in India, but we also bring to you the innovative thinking and the thoughts of the people who are really working for the propagation of the new ideas in the field of astronomy and all. So one such idea is being propagated by Mr. Anil Thanvi, who has joined us today with the help of his theory of the oscillating universe. तो आने वाले समय में आप हमारे प्लेटफॉर्म पर सुनेंगे श्री अनिल थानवी जी को, जो कि बीकानेर से आते हैं, एक शिक्षक हैं, और उन्होंने ब्रह्मांड के दोलनीय सिद्धांत से रिलेटेड अपनी थ्योरी को प्रमोट किया है। उन्होंने एक नया सिद्धांत दिया है, और उस थ्योरी को जो है उन्होंने आयुका और अन्य जगहों पर बाकायदा रिप्रेजेंटेशन के साथ प्रेजेंट भी किया है। तो मुझको बताते हुए अत्यंत हर्ष हो रहा है कि आज थानवी जी जो हैं हमारे साथ जुड़े हैं, और आने वाले समय में आप हमारे प्लेटफॉर्म पर थानवी जी के सिद्धांत को सुनेंगे। वो एक बहस का विषय हो सकता है, आप उससे सहमत हो सकते हैं, आप उससे डिसएग्री कर सकते हैं, लेकिन मेरा निवेदन यही रहेगा कि आप आएं और इस नई विचारधारा जो कि थानवी जी अपने साथ लेकर के आ रहे हैं, उसको समय देकर के अवश्य सुने। इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ मैं अपनी वाणी को विराम देते हुए आपके बैटन को हैंड ओवर करता हूं विद ए डिजिटल राउंड ऑफ अपलॉड फॉर प्रोफेसर नरेंद्र भंडारी टू स्वप्निल रस्तोगी जी फॉर द फॉर्मल वोट ऑफ थैंक्स। ओवर टू यू स्वप्निल।
Thank you, sir. This is Swapnil, and I want to thank you for making us a lovely Sunday morning to all of us. And definitely, you will like you was telling us like how can we get an amateur astronomy enthusiast, and how can we get collected the samples of meteoroids and all the things. Definitely, everyone like who is like listening to you on this digital platform, would try to collect some samples in their lifetime and want to grace like the motto of this talk. And I also want to thank you from all the organizing agencies or collaborators, Sky Foundation, and all the WIPNET clubs like Ignited Mind WIPNET Club, Sky Amateur Astronomers Club, and Women-led Science WIPNET Club, and also our event support today is even supported by AGC, Akash Ganga Center for Astronomy. So thanks a lot for today's session. We're looking forward to your collaboration in our future talks. Thank you, sir.
It was a pleasure.
विशेष आभार मैं आज के अपने अतिथि वक्ता का देना चाहूंगा और उम्मीद रखता हूं कि कभी हमारे प्रोफेसर नरेंद्र भंडारी सर अपना बहुमूल्य समय निकालकर हमको अपने चंद्रयान और मार्स ऑर्बिटर मिशन से रिलेटेड अपने एक्सपीरियंस को भी शेयर करेंगे। इन्हीं उम्मीदों के साथ मैं विशेष आभार व्यक्त करते हुए डॉक्टर भरत अडूर सर का, डायरेक्टर आकाश गंगा सेंटर फॉर एस्ट्रोनॉमी, डॉक्टर वाई रवि किरण, डायरेक्टर जवाहर प्लानिटेरियम प्रयागराज, सतीश कुकले सर, और साथ ही साथ हमारे सभी ऑडियंस जो कि देश के विभिन्न कोनों से ना केवल इस गूगल मीट पर बल्कि हमारे लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग से जुड़े उन सभी का मैं हार्दिक अभिनंदन करता हूं, हार्दिक आभार करता हूं। और साथ ही साथ जो कि टीम बिहाइंड द कर्टेंस जो मेरे साथ काम करती रही, मिस्टर शुभान राज, स्वप्निल रस्तोगी, श्वेता श्रीवास्तव, और हमारे इंदिरा गांधी प्लेनेटेरियम के साइंटिफिक ऑफिसर मिस्टर सुमित कुमार श्रीवास्तव, जिनकी वजह से आज यह पूरा प्लेटफॉर्म, यह मंच हम सभी को उपलब्ध हो पाया है। इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ मैं आप सभी से विदा लेता हूं। आप हमारे साथ जुड़े रहें और काइंडली फीडबैक फॉर्म को अवश्य भरें ताकि आप सभी प्रतिभागियों को अपना पार्टिसिपेशन का सर्टिफिकेट अवश्य प्राप्त हो जाए। यह फीडबैक का लिंक 24 घंटे तक एक्टिव रहेगा। थैंक्स अ लॉट once again, wish you a very happy and a healthy and a safe stay amidst the ongoing corona pandemic. Thank you, sir.
Okay, all the best. Bye.